The police arrest this couple, and the reason is shocking. When investigating the house, he discovers a tunnel, and what they find inside that tunnel shocks the world. It all started with what seemed like a routine arrest. A married couple, seemingly ordinary and living a quiet life in Boston, found themselves at the center of an investigation that would soon shake the world. The police had received an anonymous tip about the couple's involvement in illegal activities, but nothing could have prepared them for what they were about to uncover. As officers combed through the house, searching for evidence, something felt off. There were signs of recent construction, furniture oddly placed as if to hide something. One officer, following a hunch, pushed aside an old wooden cabinet. What he saw beneath it made his blood run cold. An almost perfectly concealed hole in the floor. The opening led to a narrow tunnel, masterfully constructed with reinforced steel walls, the kind of engineering only experts could accomplish. This wasn't some amateur escape route, it was something far more sinister. The air was damp, carrying an unidentifiable yet deeply unsettling smell. With flashlights in hand, the team pressed forward, their footsteps echoing eerily against the walls. The deeper they went, the stronger their unease grew. The tunnel wasn't just long, it was extensive, twisting and turning as if designed to mislead anyone who dared to enter. And then they reached the end. The tunnel opened into a massive underground chamber, resembling a secret laboratory. Rows of high-tech equipment lined the walls, with computers running cryptic programs. Strange symbols and notes in languages they couldn't immediately recognize were scattered everywhere. But the worst part wasn't the technology. It was what or who they found inside. Cages, rows upon rows of them, each containing people. Men, women, and children, some barely conscious, others staring blankly as if their minds had been broken beyond repair. For tubes ran from their arms, leading to machines extracting something from their bodies. The officers were frozen in shock, human experiments. The couple they had arrested weren't just criminals, they were at the center of a monstrous operation, something bigger than anyone could have imagined. The victims showed signs of genetic tampering, as if someone had been testing on them. Some had strange scars, others had unnaturally colored eyes, and a few didn't even look fully human. A conspiracy unveiled. As backup arrived and the lab was thoroughly searched, the full horror of the situation came to light. The couple wasn't working alone. This was part of something much larger, an underground network of scientists, black market dealers, and possibly even rogue government agents involved in illegal bioengineering experiments. The media erupted. Conspiracy theorists had a field day, speculating that the experiments were linked to attempts at creating enhanced humans, secret cloning projects, or even extraterrestrial research. The government, scrambling for control, denied any involvement, but the deeper the investigation went, the clearer it became someone very powerful had been funding this operation. But the most disturbing question remained: what were they trying to create? And more terrifyingly, was it already out there? The discovery shook not just Boston, but the entire world. What seemed like a simple arrest had uncovered a secret more horrifying than anyone could have ever imagined. But even as the lab was dismantled, the truth remained elusive. The couple refused to talk, their eyes filled with something even more frightening than guilt fear. As if they knew that whoever was truly behind this was still watching, and they weren't done yet. As the police secured the underground lab, forensic teams and government agencies swarmed the scene. Reporters lined the streets above, desperate for answers, but the authorities kept everything under tight wraps. The public knew something had happened, but they had no idea just how deep the horror went. The couple, now in custody, sat in an interrogation room, silent. They refused to speak. No amount of threats, bargains, or psychological pressure could make them open their mouths. It was as if they knew that speaking would mean something worse than prison. Then, at exactly 3:33 a.m., everything changed. A blackout. The entire precinct went dark for exactly 1 minute and 42 seconds. Backup generators should have kicked in, but they didn't. The surveillance cameras fried. The electronic locks on the doors disabled. When the power returned, the officers rushed to check on the suspects. The couple was gone. The steel-reinforced holding cell had been opened, not forced, not broken, but unlocked from the outside. No alarms had been triggered, no guards had seen anything. It was as if they had simply vanished. A single object was left behind on the interrogation table, a black key card with no markings except a single red symbol, a serpent devouring its own tail. The discovery of the key card sent shockwaves through the investigation. It was quickly identified as the symbol of a highly secretive organization known in intelligence circles as the Order of Ouroboros. Whispers of the order had existed for decades, but no one had ever been able to prove its existence. Some claimed it was a rogue faction within the government. Others believed it was a secret society of scientists and corporate elites pushing the boundaries of human evolution. One thing was certain: the couple had not been working alone. They had been working for something much bigger. As specialists examined the underground lab, they uncovered more horrifying truths. The experiments weren't just about genetic modification or enhancing human abilities, they were about controlling the mind. Deep within the computer systems, encrypted files revealed chilling projects with code names like Project Prometheus, MK Nova, the Ascension Trials. The files spoke of neurological implants, brainwave manipulation, and even experiments involving synthetic telepathy attempts to create a new breed of humans, ones that could be controlled remotely. The people in the cages, they were test subjects. Some had been abducted, others had been sold into the program. And the worst part, many of them were never meant to leave. Just when the authorities thought they had seen it all, they received an emergency call from a hospital 3 miles away. A young woman, barefoot, malnourished, and covered in scars, had collapsed at the emergency entrance. She was one of the missing test subjects. When doctors tried to treat her, she suddenly opened her eyes and screamed. Not a normal scream, a deafening, inhuman wail that shattered glass and caused lights to flicker. Then she spoke in a voice that seemed to echo in the minds of everyone in the room. "You have no idea what you found. They're still here, watching, waiting." And then, before anyone could stop her, she vanished. The hospital security footage corrupted. As authorities scrambled to understand what had just happened, an anonymous message was sent to the lead detective's private phone. A video file, shaky, dark, filmed from inside the tunnel before the police had arrived. The footage showed someone, likely the couple, walking through the underground lab, whispering frantically. Then, the camera turned toward a massive, heavily reinforced vault door at the end of the chamber. A robotic voice played over the footage. "Subject 001 is awake. Phase 1 is complete." Then the screen glitched. The last frame? The vault door wide open. And whatever had been inside gone. The case was classified, buried under layers of government secrecy. But those who had been there, those who had seen the truth, knew the world had changed. Because whatever had been created in that lab was now loose, and no one knew where it was. The footage of the open vault door sent chills down the spine of everyone who saw it. Subject 001 was awake, and worse, it was free. Despite all attempts to keep the case quiet, strange reports started surfacing across Boston. People were seeing things, shadowy figures moving unnaturally fast, flickering streetlights, whispers in the dark with no source. Some described a presence, something just outside their field of vision, something that made the air thick and electric wherever it passed. And then people started disappearing. The first case was a homeless man found in an alleyway 3 days after the lab raid. Or rather, what was left of him. His body was intact, but his eyes completely black, like burned out holes. His brain liquefied inside his skull. The second case was a high-ranking scientist from a private biotech firm, abducted from his own home. Surveillance footage showed him standing at his kitchen sink when suddenly he froze mid-motion. For 2 full minutes, he didn't blink, didn't move. Then, without warning, He turned and walked calmly out the front door, vanishing into the night. The third case, a police officer, one of the very same officers who had entered the tunnel. He was found in his car, parked on the side of the highway. Engine running, no signs of struggle, his face frozen in an expression of pure terror. The radio in his car kept playing one phrase, repeating over and over in a distorted mechanical voice. "He sees you, he sees you, he sees you." The government, unable to contain the growing panic, called in a specialist. Dr. Adrien Kale, a former neuroscientist and classified parapsychology researcher. Kale had spent years studying fringe experiments involving consciousness, remote viewing, and mind control. Some whisper he had once worked on black-budget programs, trying to create psychic weapons during the Cold War. Others believed he had seen something that had changed him forever. When Kale arrived in Boston, he wasn't surprised. He had seen cases like this before, but never on this scale. After reviewing the lab data and the disturbing anomalies happening around the city, he issued a chilling warning. This isn't just an escaped experiment, it's something much worse. He held up a photograph taken in the underground lab MRI scan of subject one's brain. But it wasn't normal. The brain showed activity in areas that shouldn't be possible. More terrifyingly, the scan showed a second waveform, a pattern that looked almost alien. "This thing isn't human anymore," Kale said, "and whatever's inside its mind is looking for something." The warehouse incident. That night, the police received an anonymous tip location, a deserted warehouse near the Boston docks. No security cameras, no streetlights, just an address and the message. "Come alone, no backup, no weapons, no tricks." The lead detective, James Mercer, ignored the warning. He took a full SWAT team, along with Kale and a few federal agents. They arrived just before midnight, the air heavy with the scent of salt and rot from the harbor. The warehouse was silent. The moment they stepped inside, every flashlight flickered. The radio's dead, and then they saw it. In the center of the vast, empty space stood a single wooden chair. And sitting in it was the missing scientist, the one who had walked out of his home days earlier. His eyes were rolled back, his body twitching slightly, as if caught in some invisible grip. And then, in a voice that wasn't his own, he spoke. "You shouldn't have come." The lights exploded. The warehouse shook violently, as if something massive had just slammed into it from the outside. A terrible static sound filled the air, and suddenly, the scientist screamed a sound so unnatural that it sent everyone crashing to their knees, clutching their heads. Kale, through the pain, managed to look up, and what he saw froze his blood. A figure stood behind the scientist, its face blurred, its body shifting like a living shadow. And then, just as suddenly as it began, everything went black. The aftermath. When Mercer woke up, he was alone. His entire team was gone. No signs of a struggle, no blood. Just the empty warehouse, the chair still rocking slightly, as if someone had just stood up. The only trace of what had happened was a symbol burned into the concrete floor, the same serpent devouring its own tail, Ouroboros. That night, Mercer received a phone call. A voice, distorted, whispering in his ear, "You took something from us. Now we take something from you." Then a click. A moment later, Mercer's phone screen flickered and a live video feed appeared. His own daughter's bedroom. She was asleep in her bed, but the closet door was slightly open. And inside the darkness, Mercer swore he saw something move. The war has just begun. Whatever had been locked in that lab was out now. And it was only getting started.